This is the Philanthropy Show, connecting and inspiring philanthropy.
Welcome to the Philanthropy Show. I'm your host, Luann Saraga-Walters. We have such an exciting show for you today, and it's something that I know has been on your mind, and that would be building the bench. How do you develop the next group of leaders for your organization? Well, that's not something that's particular to one nonprofit, right? It's kind of a regional or community-based, a statewide event going on. And we actually have two fantastic guests. One you have probably seen before, the other I'm sure that you're familiar with. But Michele Norris was on a few weeks ago with founder of Navigen. Thanks for coming back.
Absolutely.
Navigating generations as we have this generational cultural shift going on in the U.S. And also then Alex Sink. Such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
CFO of Florida from 2007 to 2011.
Yes.
And also, you were the Democratic nominee for governor, weren't you?
Yes.
2010? Yeah.
In 2010. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're not a 501c3, so I can say it. Love to see you do that again. But anyway, going forward with this, so Alex founded Florida Next, which is an organization that is inspiring a state of innovation. Mm-hmm. I know that's your tagline. And I wanted to talk with you two about how do we do that? How do we inspire this innovative state and develop our leaders in Florida? So I just want to start by asking you where you came up with the idea for Florida Next,
Okay.
and then we're going to dive into the topic some more. So where did this come from?
Well, after all throughout 2010, of course, I had the wonderful opportunity to travel throughout the state and listen to people about what their aspirations and their dreams were and their vision for our state going forward. And remember, we were still in a recession. So I developed all these plans and dreams around making Florida a state of innovation and focusing on growing our own small businesses, entrepreneurs. And then I keyed in on the fact that coming out of this recession, so many of our young people were finishing their education and coming out and realizing that there were no jobs and where's the promise of the future? And so even though the election didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, I wasn't willing to just stop and not try to really spread this word that Florida ought to be a place where if you want to start a business, here's the place to come. And then that led me into figuring out what are the gaps, what are the barriers, and how might an organization, a nonprofit like Florida Next, fill some of those gaps.
Well, that's a kind of a two-pronged aspect too when you're talking about creating jobs in Florida. Bringing in existing companies from the outside in, luring some folks to have their headquarters here, and or developing the skills, the qualifications, the individual talents that we already have from our base. Now, you and I talked about this a couple years ago, and this is what really prompted me to request you to be on the show, was your devotion to grooming the next generation of Floridians into those leaders that we need. Talk a little bit about that. What do you see as the challenge right now?
Well, several challenges. One is that I'm in the baby boomer generation, and so we were that big bulge of population that were born in the years post-World War II. And when I was 35 years old, I was running stuff. I was given big jobs and big leadership responsibility, whether it was in the nonprofit world or in my corporate world. And so we're a little bit of a barrier, I think, to this next generation of millennials coming up because we're not ready to quit yet. And I think it's important for some of us in the baby boomer generation to pay it forward. It's time for us to move aside and let this next generation begin to be the leaders and to understand that they can impact the world around them. So that was one of the things that was really driving this interest. And again, as I mentioned, the fact that the millennials have lived through a 5-year recession here in Florida and things have not been so great. And many of them have had to leave the state. We've had a brain drain. Leave the state and go other places. And my friends, their parents say, Alex, let's figure out a way to get our kids so I can have my grandchildren back in Florida. And we are actually seeing some of that happen in the last couple of years.
Well, you know, and Michele, with your work with Navigen, doing the navigating the generations and developing that leadership, and with the work that you do with the small businesses, the corporations, and the nonprofits, I'm hearing some of the same things from Alex that I've heard you say, in that baby boomers are wanting to do the pay it forward, the generational differences. So before we dive into how we connect these two generations, talk a little bit, for those who haven't seen our part one of this, of what those generational differences can look like between baby boomers and millennials.
The generational differences aren't as significant, I think, Luann, as the demographic situation. Because we have this humongous 78 million boomer population, and you have an 83 million millennials, and you have in the middle Gen X. So what we don't have is a normal succession plan.
Going from one generation to the very next generation, it's like skipping a generation.
Yes. And so because of that, and because of the different ways that we work as boomers, than Gen X works, than millennials work, we all have different ways and meanings of what work looks like for us. And so that is creating part of the differences, if you will. I prefer to focus on what are the strengths that each generation brings to the table, and how those strengths right now are necessary to propel us forward for what's coming, okay? And what's coming is a big change in the workplace.
So how do you do that? How do you harness the strengths of both of these? And I think you found a very creative way that we'll talk about too when we actually have Ned Pope, the Executive Director of Florida Next, join us in the next segment. But how do we capture that and kind of put them together? And specifically from nonprofit ABC's standpoint of, you know, I've got an outgoing board, I need to have some incoming members, I've got a younger staff perhaps. What are some applicable things that we can do?
So one of the things we hear about is mentoring, right? And that we need to now impart our wisdom onto the millennial generation. I also don't have that particular perspective either. I am all about co-mentoring. I am all about the fact that we have just as much to learn from them as they have to learn from us. We, you know, when I started hiring my first millennials, they were smarter than me, and that had never happened before. They had knowledge about things that I didn't know how to do, and that was very scary. It was if you come from a place of scarcity, it can be intimidating and it can be overwhelming. And once I got over that, realized, wow, this is an unbelievable wealth we're bringing into the workforce right now. And how do we, as boomers, accept that and learn from it? And so now that we have this 10-year period of transition, of moving to 75 million millennials in the workplace in 2025, we have an opportunity to take the strengths that the boomers have in building organizations and building process, the strengths that Generation X has in what is the bottom line result, how do we get there, and the strengths of the millennials, which are I could go on for hours about. How do we harness that right now for tremendous growth in our state and for our nonprofits?
What do you think, Alex? How's a way that we can do that? How can we actually, because I love your tagline, inspiring a state of innovation. How do we capture that? And you're right. I mean, my niece knows more about my iPhone than I could ever learn, and it seems like she was born with that knack. But how do we do that?
Well, part of it is practice makes perfect. So what we have to do is as Michele says, the millennials certainly have a wealth of ideas, but what our generation has is the experience and the skill development. In other words, how do you, one of the problems I heard when I did a number of focus groups around the state is from the employers is that, well, these young people, they're so involved in their technology that they have blinders on, and sometimes they get into the workplace and their interpersonal skills are not so great. And so they need to learn how to work in groups and work in teams and how to communicate effectively and not communicate by firing off an email that might not be such a nice email and hitting the send button without counting to 10. So there are communications issues and this whole interpersonal group work, because what employers want is they want the smart millennials, but they want them to be smart about the way they accomplish their objectives. And so that's a
Savvy
place that
and
I see a
office
need
etiquette.
coming. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, one of the things that I recognized a while back is that when I came out of college and into organizations, there were tremendous training programs and developmental programs. We don't have those today. Those were one of the first
Great
things
point.
cut when the economy went. And so we don't have the opportunity inside our organizations to train the things that we learned inside those training programs. And many of those were interpersonal skills and these skills that employers are saying today, we don't have those. They're not coming. Well, we didn't come with them either. They were developed by organizations.
That's such a good point.
And organizations aren't doing that developmental work anymore.
That is interesting, and I love that. And you know what it made me think of? That would be a great, what do you call when you go around the state with Florida Next and you have the little pockets of innovative...
Impact forum.
The impact forums.
Yes.
That could be a project for an impact forum suggestion towards that. But speaking of impact forums, it's already time to take our first break. So we will go ahead and take our break. And when we come back, Ned Pope, the Executive Director of Florida Next, is going to join us to talk about more of this development of leaders and how we can inspire a state of innovation throughout Florida. We'll be right back.
This show sponsored in part by
My Paper Pusher. Consider it done.
I'm Samantha Abraham, CEO and founder of My Paper Pusher. My Paper Pusher is a full-service bookkeeping and association management company that provides expert weekly and monthly services for small businesses and nonprofit organizations. We relieve the burden of bookkeeping and administration by assembling a team of accounting and association management experts that you can trust to do it for you the right way, on time, every time. With our team-based approach, we always have full-time bookkeepers and administrative professionals familiar with your account, available for your organization to answer your questions and make sure that your work never skips a beat. Our bookkeeping experts travel to your office on a regular schedule that you choose. Let our accounting and association management experts get you started on one of our easy, smart, and affordable strategic plans that will empower you with your most valuable asset, the time, energy, and resources to focus on your programs and fundraising rather than accounting and administration. With My Paper Pusher, consider it done.
Follow the Philanthropy Show on Facebook for behind-the-scenes action, polls, and commentary.
Welcome back to the Philanthropy Show, talking today about the next generation of leaders and how we develop that, building the bench with our nonprofits and throughout the state. And one very innovative way is through what Alex Sink has founded, a nonprofit called Florida Next. Ed Pope joins us now, the executive director of this fantastic organization which is inspiring a state of innovation throughout Florida. And I want to dive right in. We mentioned briefly at the end of the first segment about these impact forums. So let's have you talk about what they are and what they are intended to do, and then we're going to have a couple of success stories. I love this concept.
Oh, cool. Well, essentially, it amounts to putting a group of people together who have ideas on how to improve the area in which they live. It could be a regional area, it could be a specific city. It's all about concepts for the civic space that are creative and innovative. So something new, not a replication of something that's already happening locally. And we put a forum together, put the right amount of people in the room and give them an opportunity to pitch an idea in 90 seconds or less. This really forces them to be concise, forces them to focus on something that's digestible, and causes them to think about the idea as opposed to just being a random brainstorm, right? So folks get up in front of the room, they pitch their idea, and then we allow the members of the audience to vote on their 3 favorite ones. We tally up the votes, and then we take the top 3 and we organize work groups around those top 3 in that evening with the goal of trying to figure out at least the beginnings of an implementation plan so we can see these ideas through in some ways.
Oh, there's so many things that I just want to touch on.
Well, can I pop in,
Yes,
though,
do.
for one thing? Because one of the important elements is, I remember the first one that we did, it was basically me pulling out my Rolodex and inviting young people that I knew, and we ended up with a room full of lawyers and bankers, basically. And and they had fantastic ideas, and by their nature, they're leaders. But I also recognized that we didn't have enough diversity, and this was done in Tampa. And so one of our requirements as we go forward with these impact forums, whoever is building the group of participants, they have to have diversity, all sort racial, ethnic, sexual diversity, all religious diversity,
industries.
because that's what builds a more dynamic community, is really playing in on that diversity.
So you're getting a cross-section, basically, of the community that you're in when you do these. And how many have you done? Where have they been around Florida?
Well, we've done Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, the Fort Myers, Naples area, a couple in St. Pete, a couple in Tampa, Jacksonville,
Tallahassee,
Tallahassee.
Orlando. Yeah.
So who does the pitching? Who does the presenting?
It could be anyone. It could
Okay.
be anyone. As Alex mentioned, we try to focus on the diversity for the invites, and not just from a cultural standpoint, but also from an industry standpoint. We try to have just as many, startup entrepreneurs and technologists as we do professional service professionals. That's a redundant term, but anyway, you get the point of what I'm saying. So, so we try to get a good mix in the audience, so we have a good diversity of opinion, because that's how you can really reach these solutions that can touch the largest amount of people and really be effective. And we wanted to infuse some of that creativity into these events, and I think we're starting to see that a little bit more. So our most recent event that we did down in Naples, with the help of the Southwest Florida Community Foundation and Sarah Owen, their CEO, very creative, innovative person who wanted to support this
Love
type
her.
of initiative.
Fabulous. Yeah.
And so she allowed us to attach, her and her team allowed us to attach a new piece to the back end of this event. So it used to be we would do this event and we'd find out the most popular ideas, and then we'd get organized and try to work on them for about 90 days and see which ones kept going and gained momentum, and which ones sort of went on the shelf for maybe a later date, because people would have varying interests or responsibilities. And so we had a few successes. Our participation with the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay on Give Day, as making that as much about mobile device giving and bringing in a new demographic.
And for the community. I
As
think
it is
that's-
about the community.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so in Southwest Florida, we attached this new piece that has a crowdfunding element. So at the end of the forum, we put the ideas into a hopper on an online crowdfunding site called Cause to Fund, which is based out of Tampa. A good friend of mine named Costas Stoilis started that.
So it's a crowdfunding for nonprofits. This is
Crowdfunding
Cause
for
to
nonprofit.
Fund, okay.
Yeah, you got it. And they've been featured in Forbes magazine and some other really, they've gotten some really good press and earned media. And so what we try to do is just build some momentum around those ideas. You're not going to raise enough money to bring them completely to fruition within 45 to 60 days through a crowdfunding initiative. What you will do is get a powerful, substantive market validation tool. So getting folks to think about these nonprofit ideas more from a private sector standpoint. If you have a startup idea, how do you attract investors? Well, you beta test your product.
But you're getting the energy around it too, because more and more people, you've got the buy-in, because at the Impact Forum, people are already, they're stating their opinion and their votes. Which of these do we want to, which of these projects do we want to say, yes, as a community, this is what we're doing?
Right.
And then how do we then gather that energy of bodies, skills, talents, all that around it? That I think it's fantastic that you're actually implementing these and going forward. When's your next one?
I think we're shooting for another one in July here in Tampa.
Awesome.
And it's going to be a Tampa Bay regional initiative, and this is a new thing that we're adding as well. We're going to have a little bit more focus on a problem. So what we're going to talk about at this upcoming forum is going to be how we utilize brand new technology, and in some cases, technology that has been founded or started here in the Tampa Bay region to help small businesses and nonprofits by adding efficiency or creating other verticals for which they can generate revenue. So it's going to be a very interesting project.
Yes, and not something that's necessarily even going to be 30, 60, 90. That may take you further along.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
hope it becomes
Yeah.
something that's ongoing. I mean, that's kind of the point of this,
That's
is
cool.
we get it jump started and then see where it goes from there.
Well,
And the
so-
cool thing about Florida Next is that we do have a statewide footprint. So we're hoping that as we find these projects that are successful in Tampa, for example,
They'll get replicated.
that there will be people in other communities who will step up and
Pick it up and
attempt
say,
to replicate
yeah, we want to
them.
do it here.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, because we've seen how beneficial it's been to your community.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, well, inspiring a state of innovation, but it's also developing your leaders, because you're giving
Mm-hmm.
these people, you're empowering them to make this change, to create this new project, whatever that might be.
Right.
And how fulfilling is it when you see, like you had mentioned Give Day, and how it was the first time you did it in Tampa Bay was over $1 million.
Yeah.
$1 million in 24, and that hadn't been done in Tampa Bay before.
No, that's correct.
And how many volunteers did you have working on that project?
We probably had about 45 that were, attending regular meetings and things of that nature. There was probably a core group of about 15 of us that recruited the rest.
Wow.
And then from there, it just went on, because it really, it's dependent upon how much the nonprofits embrace it. I think because it was a first-year initiative,
Sure.
the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay and us as well kind of struggled with, all right, what's the right lane to go into? What's the right path? And I think this year we're very much settled on training with best practices, focusing on utilizing this as an initiative that nonprofits can use to learn how to be more sustainable and add a new piece to their revenue stream or their development stream, right? So a lot of the nonprofits that are coming right here to the Nonprofit Leadership Center for the trainings, they hadn't done a crowdfunding campaign yet, hadn't even really thought about it, didn't know how to do one, right? So this is a way to kind of dip a toe in the water without
And they didn't even know, nobody knows much about the power of mobile giving.
Right.
Too.
That's-
So,
that was,
Well, I
yeah.
think that goes
Yeah.
back to what the two of you said in the first segment, was in developing your leaders, there is a necessary amount of trial and error, testing, discovering what are the limits, what can we do, how do we do this, to get comfortable with it. And I think that's a big piece of empowerment.
And empowering those in your organization, because it is, this was a largely mobile campaign. And in embracing what we talked about last time are those, the face of a millennial philanthropist. The face of a millennial philanthropist isn't necessarily millions of dollars, but it's $25 at a time, and the power of that. And the fact that we're embracing mobile technology to a wider audience that has a automatic built-in philanthropic perspective already. And we raised all of our children in the state of Florida. They had to do community service. They like that. They understand it. But we now have to embrace our organizations to take advantage of understanding how to communicate with them and empowering those folks inside our organizations to bring creative and new ways to do it.
And I want to just give kudos out to the United Way of the Suncoast also, because they work with so many nonprofits. They got very engaged and gave us some all-important funding to help get the project going along with the Community Foundation.
Absolutely, and I think they're going to be a powerful catalyst
Going forward.
because they're really well aligned with us on this integration of technology in nonprofits as a better, more efficient way to do their business. And so we have some trainings that are set up specifically for their agencies, and we're going to be working with their team on that too. So we're excited about that for the rest
And
of the
Give
year.
Day this year is May
5th.
5th.
Cinco
Cinco
de
de
Mayo.
Mayo.
515.
Excellent. So we know that, tune in. Make sure, where can they go to sign up for our Give Day?
GiveDayTampaBay.org is the
GiveDayTampaBay.org.
website. There's a link right on the front page that you click on. It only takes a few seconds to sign up. It is a free campaign to participate in. There's no upfront cost from the nonprofits whatsoever. And we're going to be pushing this thing out. And just to put it in perspective, this time last year we had probably about 35 entities signed up. And I think we just crossed over 300 sign ups.
Wow, that's
So
fabulous.
it's growing fast.
That is
and,
fabulous.
and so we hope everyone gets in. We'll be doing events in both St. Pete and Channelside here in Tampa, as well as downtown. Tampa Bay Rays are one of the big sponsors, so we'll be doing an
Excellent.
event outside of their store
Excellent.
in downtown Tampa, and also some things with them in St. Pete.
And I know this is one of the projects that you have going on with Florida Next, and surprisingly, we're already out of time. But if you want more information, I do recommend going to their website, because there's a load of information, flnext.org, to check out everything that you guys are doing.
FloridaNext.org.
FloridaNext.org. And I just love having you guys on. So the next segment is when we talk about our truth or care, and that is part of the reason that we have the Philanthropy Show, is to make that personal connection between what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why we're all sitting here today. So we're going to take another short break, and we will be right back.
The Philanthropy Show is on demand every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at both thephilanthropyshow.com and YouTube/WatchMVVP TV. And now a word from our studio sponsor.
Hi, I'm Emily Benham, the CEO of the Nonprofit Leadership Center and the proud sponsor of the Philanthropy Show. One of the things I love about working at the NLC is being immersed in a learning environment. Every day we have the opportunity to learn from our trainers and from our students who freely share their aha moments. I'd like to share a moment of mine with you, courtesy of one of my favorite authors, Jon Acuff. The headline of his recent blog read, "Every day is January 1st if you want it to be." Think about it. Why do we think that we can only commit to new things to change ourselves, to change the world through our work with nonprofits on January 1st? What if today, what if every day could be January 1st and we approached it with the same energy and enthusiasm as we do the beginning of each year? I love this idea and have made it my daily resolution, even when it's not January 1st. Here's another date for you to remember, May 8th. That's the date of our 5th annual leadership conference featuring, you guessed it, Jon Acuff and his new book, Do Over. We also are featuring Sam Silverstein, a nationally acclaimed accountability expert. So mark your calendars to hear this dynamic duo and go to our website, www.nonprofitleadershipcenter.com, and remember, make today January 1st. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Philanthropy Show. Hard to believe we're wrapping up the show again. I tell you, these go so fast, and it is so much
Unbelievably
fun.
fast.
I know, and it's wonderful. And now you're well, now you're all veterans, but you're a double veteran. So this is our segment that we call Truth or Care, going into that heart space, and why you three are involved in philanthropy, what it means to you from a personal story, example, transformative experience, something that you can share about that. And Ned, can we start with you?
Certainly.
Okay.
Well, you know, I remember graduating from college in 2004, and I went to Florida State, go Noles, and I remember, you know, when I was leaving and kind of looking at the landscape and recognizing that I'm a Florida boy, I'm a 5th generation Floridian, I grew up in St. Augustine Beach, and you know, this is where I want to be, right? This is the lifestyle that I appreciate. And almost immediately, you know, within a year of graduating from college, I moved to Atlanta. And because there seemed to be more opportunity there. And as I was living there, there was something that really resonated with me on a college football Saturday when I went out with a bunch of my FSU alumni friends. And we went down to Buckhead to all the bars and restaurants where you watch college football on the Saturdays up there. And there were a lot of garnet and gold colors, and there were a lot of orange and blue colors. And that really stuck with me because I kind of looked around and I said, here we are in Atlanta, Georgia, and there's this massive representation of young talent who are alumnus of Florida and Florida State. And that was kind of one of those moments where I was sitting there as I'm, you know, drowning my sorrows at that time in the football team. Don't have to do that as much anymore, thankfully. But in some beverages there and just kind of thinking about it, I said, you know, I don't want to be one of these people who sees a landscape that I'm not comfortable with, that I'm not happy about, that I think can be changed, that runs to somewhere else. So I'm going to go back to my home state, and I'm going to struggle, and I'm going to fight, and I'm going to scrap and claw to be somebody that can be a catalyst for the type of change that I want to see. So that when it comes time for my kids are 4 and 1, so when it comes time for them to advance to a stage where they're looking at the state of Florida as a whole, a place with 5 major media markets, with 5 major regions that are dramatically different from one to the next, where you can have a completely global experience going from Jacksonville to Miami, right?
Yes.
This is the type of place that everybody should want to come if there are the opportunities to accommodate that residency. So I think, you know, from my standpoint, Florida Next is a vehicle for us to focus not on recruitment, but retention. Let's make sure the folks that we're spending our taxpayer dollars on through Bright Future scholarships aren't leaving the second they graduate. That's a tangible loss for our economy. You know, we're investing in the education of those folks.
And I love your passion around that. And what you're saying too is you had an established connection with your community. You felt that when you saw those colors and said, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, and I want to be able to pass that to my children too, so they have that. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being the Executive Director of Florida Next.
I love it.
I'm going to pop over the other side, over to Michele Norris.
Yes.
Let's see. What is your truth or care moment?
Well, I shared it the last time, so I'm not going to share the same one. But what I am going to share is that typically the way I was raised is that you go through a series. You know, you go through your years where you're young and you learn, and then you go out and make a living, and then you give back. I don't think we can do that anymore, and I don't think we need to do that anymore. I think that the generation that we have brought up as boomers, congratulations, is our sons were born on the same day in the same hospital.
Wow.
But
That could generate a lot of conversation.
yes, but our children know this inherently now, and we've changed the face of philanthropy. And we don't have to wait until they have millions of dollars to give. And I think that caring piece of what the boomers have brought to raise millennials this way is important, and we don't have to stall our nonprofits until this $70 trillion of wealth is transferred to them from our generation. So I think the face of philanthropy is very bright right now, because we are in a complete state of innovation, and I'm excited about that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you get me excited even more than I already am. Thank you for sharing that, Michele. And Alex?
Well, I think for me it goes back to family and faith. In my faith, there is a parable in the New Testament about the talents, and the basics are God has given all of us our own unique set of talents, and we have a responsibility then to pay it forward and to use those talents to help improve and better the lives of other people, no matter what your own personal struggles are. And so that's why I've just, there's the joy of giving. You know, there's you know, just almost no better joy than to be a giver. And as my father always said, you can give as much as you want to, but somehow, some way, it's always going to come back to you. And that's what I've tried to teach my own children as well. So whether it's through volunteering or writing checks, or as I have done over and over again, I have raised a lot of money for many nonprofits. You know, last night I was at Junior Achievement celebrating 50 years of Junior Achievement, and I was involved in starting J.A. BizTown, and 15,000 Hillsborough County school children every year get to go and experience what it's like to be in the real world for one day. So there's pride around that. And now I'm involved at United Way Worldwide, and our group is trying to spread this culture of philanthropy around the world into places like formerly communist China, into Russia, into other cultures that don't have this culture of philanthropy that's very unique in our country, in the United States.
Well, you know, it's interesting, and when your father said the more you give, you get the, it's obvious that you get the return, because you could burn out by giving so much if you didn't get the return. That's right. But thank you for everything that you have given, for being a donor, for being a board member, for being a founder, for being so invested in the projects that you're doing, and for being a visionary for the state of Florida. Really appreciate you and the work that you do.
All it takes is being proud of this guy
Always
over
a
here.
pleasure, my friend.
Yes, thanks for being on,
Thanks,
Alex.
Luann.
It's so nice to have you on. And
My
you
dear.
again, Michele. Look, we didn't have to quite do the yoga stretch we did last
no, we
time.
didn't.
So we're wrapping up this show. It was a delight to have these three lovelies talking about our development of our leaders that are coming up, building your bench. Hope they gave you some great ideas for your own nonprofit, and be sure to check with us again next Monday at 4 for the Philanthropy Show. See you then.
Do you have an idea for the Philanthropy Show? Contact us via our website or email us at tps@myvideovoice.com.